Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to another of our Webinar Wednesday series on managing your small business during the pandemic webinar. This is our 16th week. We've been here, 16th week since back on March 18th, when we first started hearing about EIDL loans and economic disaster injury loans and other resources that are available. So we've been here about every week since then, or have been here every Wednesday, and plan to be here for the next several Wednesdays while you still have an interest in learning how to manage the business through the pandemic. So good afternoon. My name is Kelly Bearden. I'm the director of the CSU Bakersfield Small Business Development Center, or Sbdc as we're called. And we're located in downtown Bakersfield. A lot of the things that we're going to go over today include a little bit about resources that are available for your businesses. And one of those across the country is America's Sbdc program. In all 50 states, including 6 regional centers in California, we're part of the actual Central California region and serving all of Kern County. And, you know, Kern's the number 3 county size-wise geographically in the state of California. So that's not enough. So they said, hey, take number 2 over there in Inyo County and also number 18 geographically in Mono County. So we have a large territory that we cover. Started doing these webinars back in 2013, partly because of that large territory, and have been going ever since. So welcome. It's great to have you back and have so many of you that keep coming back every week for more information on actually getting through this particular process. So do realize that throughout the Central California region, there are 5 other Sbdcs that cover the Central Valley and Sierra Coast, or Central Coast. The Eastern Sierra is all ours. So the other centers are in Clovis, in Merced, Modesto, Salinas, and San Luis Obispo. Reach out to them if you have any questions or if you have any needs. So again, we're here today because of our very many sponsors, funded in part by a number of organizations and a lot of support that we receive. Nationally, the U.S. Small Business Administration funds the Sbdc program, but locally, we're an economic development partner of the County of Kern. Midstate Development has offered us some great real estate downtown in Bakersfield and offices. Going back since 2012. Our School of Business and Public Administration is CSUB, great supporters, and it's great working out of the School of Business with the faculty and staff there. Blue Tech Valley and the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, also known as GoBiz. So we do have quite a bit on tap today. As always, there's a lot of changes going on, with the virus itself, and that affects us. And we're going to get an update in a little bit from our guest speaker today, James Service. And so we're going to find out what's going on and the latest on the Kern Recovers program. We're going to get into more of managing your PPP through the forgiveness, very minimal PPP and EIDL update. The next thing we're kind of looking on the horizon is we're expecting potentially some more stimulus that could occur in later in July. Not much news on that right now, but with Congress going out on recess in August, we do expect more things to happen there. And always your questions in a poll. So do have your questions ready for our guest speaker, and we're going to answer those right after we introduce him and get into his presentation and have his questions for him. But before we introduce Jim, we're going to go up here and we're going to actually open up the poll. There it goes. Thank you. And we're going to have 3 poll questions for you today. And a number of these will help us throughout the presentation today to give us a little bit more of information on the fly about who's out there today and what your needs and interests are and where you stand in this process of using this capital from both local and federal sources. So we're going to launch the first poll, and it's very simple. Who was your PPP lender? And so we're looking at what type of bank or lender you used, and you're getting out there right away. Community banks, did you use a big bank, an online lender, a credit union or nonprofit entity like your CDFIs, or potentially a mid-sized bank, or did you use somebody else that we don't have on there? So 6 options, a lot of options today. And we're just trying to gauge where you're coming from for forgiveness. It's going to help a lot. And getting about 53% of you that have voted. Give you another couple seconds. The community banks are leading the poll, and then the big banks, and then a collection of others. But we'll give you just a second or two to wind it down and in the poll. And let's share the results with you right now. And you see that over half of you have used a community bank. So in Kern County, I know we had a lot of community banks that were very active and very supportive of the PPP. And those of you outside Kern, I think, had community banks as well. So 56%, 27% for big banks. Online lenders, only 3% used online lenders. Credit unions and other nonprofits, 6% as mid-sized bank, and one of you had something else. So we'll stop sharing that poll and actually open up the second poll. And this question is going to deal with PPEs. And the question is, how vital is your need for PPEs at this time, the personal protection equipment? Is it very important, somewhat important, not important, or not really important? And I realize we have contractors on, self-employed and others, but what we're seeing is that PPEs are very important and somewhat important. So dominating the fields, especially with, the news about every day. So we'll give you a little bit more time to vote. We have about 53% of you in, and in the poll in a couple seconds and share the results with you. So there we go, right there. Both somewhat and very important, 80%. So 4 out of 5, kind of like 4 out of 5 dentists recommend. 4 out of 5 of you agree that PPEs right now and your need for the PPE is very or somewhat important. Okay. One last poll, and open that up right now. And here we go. Poll question number 3 is, I received an EIDL loan. The correct amount that I received, the amount of my EIDL loan is 1, too big, number 2, too small, or 3, just about right. Yeah, kind of like the 3 bears, huh? Too hot, too cold, just about right. Well, EIDL, you really can't say, and you kind of get a surprise when you find out how much your loan is for. And so for those of you that have received the EIDL loan, not the EIDL advance, the amount, and we have about 25% of you voted, so good sample size, and that's increasing. And it's overwhelming that most of you think it's too small. So anyway, get in, here's your last shot. One more vote kicks us to 30%. And let's end that poll and share the results with you. And as far as your EIDL, too small. And that could be the early ones, if you recall, got in at about $500,000, and then it was $350,000 at the next level for the maximum, and then reduced to $150 because of demand. Just about right is over a third of you, 37%, and too big. There's actually 4 of you that got an EIDL that is just too big. Okay, we'll keep that in mind for today and for future topics that we bring to the show. But it's great right now to introduce our Kern County Chief Operating Officer, James Zervich. You see James's, and have seen it for a little bit, his bio that's there on the table. And Jim was with us a few weeks ago and has been instrumental in actually bringing a lot of what is being done to Kern County and with the PPE program and other things. So it's been great having him on board and guiding this CARES Act package of the Kern Recovers loan and PPEs. And for updates, Jim, it's great to have you. Take it away.
Hey, thanks, Kelly. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and speak to this group again. The Sbdc and you in particular have been really helpful in the county's development of these programs, understanding the business needs and being able to bring forth the assistance programs that we've been working on. So I really appreciate your help and the support of the department. And today, I realize I'm probably speaking to a group that has heard me speak on this topic before in some forum. So today I want to give kind of a brief overview of what we're doing, but more importantly, an update on what's new with regard to our Kern Recovers program. So I'm going to go ahead and share a screen, share my screen rather, so you can see this presentation. And let's see, so you should be seeing my Kern Recovers, supporting local small businesses through COVID-19. So this is our county effort to support our local economy through the economic difficulties that have resulted from COVID-19. And really, this effort is funded from federal stimulus money. So similar to the businesses that we've been hearing from getting EIDL loans or PPP loans, the county actually got $157 million in federal funding through the CARES Act, through what's called the Coronavirus Relief Fund. And that money is really intended for the county to cover the cost in responding to COVID-19. So this is money we're using for public health work, for keeping our community safe, getting the word out, for work at our alternative care site at the fairgrounds, and really work throughout the county in responding to the public health crisis. But it's also can be used for other types of impacts from COVID-19. And what we're here to talk about today is that this pool of money, there were allocations made to help support our local economy. And really we've funded and launched 2 programs to date. We'll be talking about those in just a minute. This federal funding has to be spent by the county before December 30th. So we have a fairly limited window to get this money out and to work and to cover our costs. And it must be spent related to COVID-19 impacts. So there has to be a direct impact by COVID-19. We developed a utilization plan for these funds and brought it to the Board of Supervisors a couple months ago that included some general allocations, and there's specific allocations within these categories, but as shown on my slide here, local government, that's cities and the county, there's about $108 million of effort costs well, funding that go to cover local government related costs. Small business support, that's our Kern Recovers small business loan and the PPE program we're going to talk about shortly. That is really the focus of my discussion today. That's the $35 million for small business support. And there was an allocation of $4 million for safety net services to assist with homeless related COVID issues, food insecurity issues, things like that. And then about $10 million was held back, understanding, hey, there's going to be future needs that develop. And we are actually have some things we're looking at right now in that category. But focusing on the small business support, with that money, the county got together and created what's referred to now as Kern Recovers. And in Kern Recovers, within Kern Recovers, we launched 2 programs. The first one to launch was the Small Business Relief Program. So similar to the PPP program, this offers fully forgivable loans for up to $75,000 a piece. We funded this with $25 million of that federal CARES Act money, and it is for local small business. So we're targeting smaller businesses than what's typically qualifies under the SBA definition of small businesses. We are looking at 50 employees or less. We are looking at Kern County. You have to have a presence in Kern County. You have to be a local business. And you have to be impacted by COVID-19. We rolled that program out. We focused on businesses that first didn't receive federal PPP funding. And we tried to bring them bring them this assistance first. So since then, we've moved into other categories, but we were really focused on bringing folks that hadn't been able to get assistance and that were deemed non-essential. So those businesses that were shut down and unable to get federal assistance, we wanted to reach out to them first. And I'll give you an update on where we're at with that program. Hopefully you're all familiar with that program. If not, there is a web link at the end of my presentation for more information, and I would encourage you to follow up on that because that program is moving along at a swift pace. More recently, really this week, we've launched the PPE Support Program. So this is a program that we have developed, and we are delivering PPE to small businesses. And I say PPE, but we also include some general sanitation type supplies, and I'll tell you what's covered at no cost to businesses. So this is an effort for us to take this money to utilize the county's bulk purchasing abilities and to deliver through a network of locations countywide PPE at no cost to businesses. It's not intended to be a solution forever, but it is intended to help businesses during this time of COVID-19 impact and closure, to kind of getting into a business model that is sustainable in the new environment and under the new guidelines, and recognizing that you may not be able to find PPE and you may not have that cost built into your current business model yet. So this is intended to help you during that time, bridge until you're able to make those adjustments. So the Small Business Relief Program, here's just an update on our program. So we have, and these numbers were current as of yesterday. I can see they've already changed, and depending on timing, I can show you an updated number. $17.56 million has been put out to local small businesses in the form of those loans. These are forgivable loans. The average size is $27,200. And we have directly funded 611 businesses throughout Kern County across 199 industries. So a very broad application, very broad reach on this program. And I'm very happy with the distribution that we've seen in these funds. Currently, the program is prioritizing all non-PPP recipients. So if your business did not get funded with PPP funding and you have not participated in this program or sought to see if you qualify, I would encourage you to reach out to one of our financial partners on our website and get an application in. We are also prioritizing businesses that are subject to a second round shutdown. So last week, the governor of California went out and instituted a rule that certain industries had to shut back down, right? We know that restaurants with in-service dining, for example, are shut back down. Wineries, movie theaters, family entertainment centers, zoos, card rooms, and bars have all been shut back down. Even if you're one of those industries, even if you've received PPP funding, we have prioritized those applications. So you are eligible for this program. That is our first venture into funding folks that have received federal stimulus money. With our money, I guess it's our first venture into allowing PPP recipients to also participate in this program. And because these businesses are subject to the second shutdown, it seemed like an area we could respond immediately to and try to provide some additional support so that they can have that during this time of really in a lot of cases, really dire situation of just getting your business reopened and then now having to close down again. The program, if you've been to our website, you've probably seen this dashboard. This is actually a dynamic dashboard, and it is a current view of our program. This is current as of yesterday. So on the map, you'll be able to see the graphical representation of our businesses. You can see the program spend at 17.56 million. Today, that number is 18.3 million. So we've already seen that number increase. You can see the gauge as we move up to our program total of 25 million. and all of the pertinent information here. The days to fund measurement, that is the average days from the date of an application to the date that the county wires money to a bank that will then in turn distribute money to a borrower. So that's what that measurement is. This is a dynamic dashboard. So if you're on our website and if you click on full service restaurants, all of the dashboard information adjusts to tell you how many restaurants were funded, what's the average loan for a restaurant, and so forth. So I'd encourage you, go on, take a look at our webpage. It's part of our effort to be transparent in how this funding is rolling out. And today, that 611 business number is now 634 businesses across 203 industries. So we see these continuing to grow. That is roughly 73% of our program total. So if you're in those categories currently being prioritized for funding and haven't received funding, I would encourage you to get an application in quickly, as we have just over 25% of our funding remaining. Switching gears here, we have our PPE Support Program. This really launched July 1st. We started to take phone calls and schedule pickups, but this week is really our first major rollout, and we've started to distribute PPE through this program. We really started up on Tuesday, I would say. So program eligibility, this is supporting businesses that are located in Kern County, have less than 200 employees, and of course you have to have been impacted by COVID-19, and you're going to use this product to mitigate those impacts. Important conditions, we do verify businesses, so when you call to schedule a pickup, there will be information regarding your business that you have to provide to the county so that we can verify that you exist, that you are a Kern County business, and qualify for this program. All the products have to be used for your business purposes, and they really need to be used in Kern County. So we're not going to supply these products to then be used outside of the county. Anything that's unused has to come back to the county, and of course, can't be sold or traded or anything else. It is meant to support our local small businesses. This program is currently supplying 4 categories of products. So we are offering 3-ply ear loop disposable face masks, vinyl gloves, powder-free in 3 different sizes, disinfectant wipes, and then hand sanitizer pumps. And products are subject to availability and substitution. We are doing bulk purchasing. So I can tell you our first order for this type of product, we ordered $500,000 worth of supply. And we then a week later turned around and placed another order for $500,000. So that's to give you an idea. We do have to substitute products because it is based on availability, but generally these are the areas that we're focusing on, and we are currently distributing these products. This program was initially allocated $5 million to support this program. So we have committed about $1 million so far. And we are having regular conversations about where we need to add supplies or switch out supplies. Down on the bottom right of the screen, you'll see a quantity of supplies received based on number of employees. This is really a maximum, and so we will give a business a certain amount of product based on their employee count in order to kind of be efficient and keep things relatively equitable across the participants. You can see the table. This table is on our website, and this is available currently. So this is how we're distributing. These are maximums. So a business can definitely ask for less. They can ask for just 1 product instead of all 4 products. So we're definitely flexible in that regard. Our program is intended to supply a business for a 2-week period. So you can participate the first time at any point, but then that next participation would need to be 2 weeks out from your original pickup. So these quantities are intended to supply a 2-week period. This is a map of coverage. So this is an internal map that we developed to kind of strategize on how we were going to supply this product. We are delivering product through a network of 16 locations that are county-owned locations. They are strategically located throughout the county. There are 4 in Metro Bakersfield. The rest are in outlying areas. The radiuses you see are a 20-mile radius, meant to indicate a 20-minute drive time roughly for a business that may be in an outlying area, to ensure that we have coverage in all the major metropolitan areas and areas of business. What is on the website is this list of areas of direct locations. So these are all our locations that are currently delivering product. They are the locations that were represented on the map. So any businesses can use this and know which location. The county will help you when you go to schedule your pickup, which location may be closest to you or which location you'd like to receive product at. But that is the network that we're operating through now. And you'll see we're primarily utilizing county-owned facilities where we have staff, so that we are able to leverage our existing workforce, our existing assets to deliver this program in a really cost-effective way. So, for example, a lot of these locations are libraries that are closed to the public because of COVID-19. Well, we've got an empty building. I have staff there. Why don't we use that to deliver this support product directly to the communities? And that's what we've done. We're also leveraging our ETR facilities, that's employer training resource facilities, because they hit some of the communities that the libraries don't in some cases. So that's the strategy we employed. It's a really simple process. We do have an order form online that you can complete. There is an email address that you would submit that to, and then the county contacts you to schedule your pickup. There is also a phone number on our website that you can call and accomplish this same process, talking to one of our support representatives on the phone. And our website here is kerncounty.com. This is under the Kern Recovers subsection, so you can, if you don't remember this full URL, you can certainly go to kerncounty.com and look for a green circle that says Kern Recovers. If you click on Kern Recovers, it will take you to both of these programs and provide information on participation for both the small business loan program and the PPE support program. So, Kelly, I think that's everything I wanted to convey. Let's see. In fact, let me just, since I do have, I'll take one more minute just to show you what our website looks like. And Kelly, give me a thumbs up if you can see my Kern Recovers website.
Got it.
Okay, perfect. So this is my version of the dashboard, but this is represented on the website as well. And I will just show you, if you click, for example, on, or hover over rather, the full service restaurant category, we can see the percentage and dollar amounts. And if I were to click on that, these numbers all adjust, and you can see the average loan size, the number of restaurants are supported, and the map of where those restaurants are. Same is true, maybe we want to see beauty salons. You can see beauty salons are getting an average of $7,000, versus the restaurant category that was at $51,000. So there's a lot of interesting information here, and every one of our categories are represented here. So I'd encourage you, if you're a data person, this is probably a interesting thing to look at. On our Kern Recovers website, if you're on the Kern County website and you find this Kern Recovers button, if you click on Kern Recovers, you will see links to both our PPE Support Program and Small Business Forgivable Loan Program, and information on those on these websites as long in each of these categories. So, with that, Kelly, I'd happy to answer any questions that you have, and if anyone else sends in any questions, I'm happy to answer those now or at a later date.
Fantastic, Jim. Well, I know our SBDC clients have been very, very vocal about how great both of the programs have been, and they've been able to access both of them. So let's get some questions to you. First question is, how long does the PPE program run for?
So it's going to depend on funding and just demand. Our initial intent was to see if we could run it for 60 days with $5 million and see how that engaged the program demand at that point. this category of expenditure, we had set aside $10 million to fund these types of efforts and supporting the reopening of small businesses. So depending on where we're at in 60 days, we would reevaluate and either go back to the Board of Supervisors and ask for additional funding for this program, or be looking at other opportunities on way we can support businesses reopening and getting back to getting into the new mode of business in the post-COVID world. So $5 million, roughly 60 days, but it will depend on program demand and funding.
Next question is, my business has over 200 employees in Kern County. However, I have less than 200 FTEs. Do I qualify?
So I'm assuming that means you have a lot of part-time employees.
Correct.
We would calculate based on full-time equivalents, so FTEs. So if you have fewer than 200 FTEs, we would consider that acceptable and you would qualify. I'll also say I had an organization that has fewer than 200 employees but has a bunch of volunteers. It's a nonprofit, and that pushed them over the 200 employee count. We determined that volunteers weren't counted in the employee count, and they were provided or are being provided PPE. So we will try to be as flexible as we can. The intent here is that we're funding local small business. So we'll try to use that spirit in how we deliver the program.
Can churches make use of the county's sponsored PPE program?
Yes. Both PPE and I will say our forgivable loan program, as long as you're a nonprofit entity, you could qualify for both of those programs as a church.
Well, I can answer this one, Jim. Is the PPE program for Kern only? And this one is for Kern only. However, there are programs in the Eastern Sierra for the other two counties we represent, and I'll touch on those as soon as we're done with the question and answers.
I'm sure they're not as good as our program though, right, Kelly?
Well, that goes without saying.
Yeah, no, we are focused on the needs of Kern County, and so all of our programs are exclusive to Kern County.
But check with your local county. If you're in the Eastern Sierra, I'll just answer that now. Just go to your chambers of commerce in Inyo County, Lone Pine and Bishop. And then in Mono County, go to your various chambers of commerce there, and they are distributing PPE there.
I'm glad you mentioned that. And we're working directly with the chambers of commerce throughout Kern County as well, both to promote these products, to help get this information out, and to assist the small businesses. So reach out to them. In some cases, we may be distributing product through them as well, depending on how our program moves forward. But chambers are a great resource.
The next question is regarding the loan program, and it is they received a PPP program. There's one. But their business is deemed essential. Will they be able to apply? Actually, they did apply on June 4th, but haven't heard back. I'm assuming it's not open to essential businesses that have received the PPP loan.
So we're not delineating between essential and non-essential at this point. What we are delineating to is if you are a PPP recipient, the only PPP recipients we're prioritizing at this time are the ones that are in categories that are subject to the second shutdown. So that list that I had provided, restaurants, bars, family entertainment, there's a handful of those that are subject to the governor's order last week. So those are the folks that are being prioritized at the moment. Depending on funding availability, we will be looking to open it up broadly to PPP recipients. I can't tell you exactly when that will be. We look at that on a daily basis and have calls with all our lenders on a weekly basis and discuss that very issue. So we may get there in a week, it may be 2 weeks. We may not if funding goes quicker than that in supporting those businesses that are actually being shut down for the second time.
I have not applied for PPP, and I'm an independent contractor. I don't have payroll. Can I apply for Kern Recovers?
So independent contractors, yes. It'll be based on your 2019 Schedule C for your tax return. You have to show a net profit on that 2019 Schedule C. If you do, then that number can be used to represent the owner's payroll for our calculations. And so, yes, you can, if you have, and that goes for any sole proprietor, LLC, partnership, folks that maybe the owner doesn't take a paycheck. Maybe they just take a draw from their business and that's how they support themselves. We do allow that to be calculated. We utilize either the K1 for a partnership or LLC or the Schedule C net profit for a sole proprietor to figure out what they qualify for. But yes, you are eligible. I'd encourage you to contact one of the 4 lenders, financial institutions on our website, and they can help you with the application process.
Answered like a true CPA there, Jim. Hey, last question. What is the timeline after someone applies? Do they receive the PPEs?
So I don't know, it's very new. I can't tell you exactly how far out they're scheduling, and it's probably different depending on which area you're in. Some may be more impacted than others. So I can't answer that. Go ahead and call them. They will, all of the pickups are pre-scheduled. So you can't show up you need to schedule it in advance. So it's a pretty efficient process, but I don't know how long that wait currently is. So contact the email or phone number on our website, and they can tell you what that looks like.
Fantastic. Great having you back, Jim.
Hey, no problem. I really appreciate the opportunity, Kelly.
Well, a great program, and it's good to get the word out, and keep doing great work over there.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Okay. So, mentioned a little bit about Inyo and Mono County PPE, and distributed in both counties through chambers. I know the state is getting involved with assisting some of the areas in distributing PPE. So, in Inyo and Mono County, like we mentioned, check your Lone Pine and Bishop chambers. Maybe even check out the ones out by Death Valley, perhaps. I'm not sure, but you can check into those. Mono County has 5 chambers of commerces they're distributing. Another thing that's going on is there's a unique Mammoth Lakes. The town of Mammoth Lakes has about $300,000, and they are actually making grants to small businesses that have storefront locations. So do check with the Mammoth Lakes Chamber of Commerce or the town of Mammoth Lakes on that program. I know it's ending very, very, very soon. The application time was a very short window. So do check with that. If you're in other areas, please check your local SBDCs or check with your chambers or county governments and see if there's a PPE program working in your particular area. Very important with the soaring COVID-19 rates that we get as many of the PPEs out as possible. Okay, let's shift bases and let's talk a little bit about PPP and very, very, very little about EIDL, and get into the form, get into some of the quirks and some of the other things that we're starting to find, answer a few of your questions at the end. But now, the PPP program is now officially open until August the 8th. The same basic guidelines as before, a little bit different. We had a couple questions from people that I actually applied for the PPP and the term scared me, and so I declined it. Can I apply now that it's reopened? And unfortunately, the answer to that is no. We've talked about that in the past with the EIDL loan also. If you do turn that down, it generally, and in most cases, will not be made available again. So do keep in mind, if you do get offered one of the PPP or EIDL loans, if you turn them down, it's pretty much gone for this disaster. I'm not going to talk much about it, but I think you saw in the news a lot of the people who received PPPs who are, I don't know, big law firms, you know, billionaires, etc. I don't really want to get into that. We don't have enough time, but if you want more information, you can Google and find out. But there's a lot of more information that's becoming available on who the actual borrowers are that we've talked about also the last few weeks. What we're seeing is big banks are going to delay the forgiveness form, accepting them until August, sometime in August. So it looks like we have about a month for many lenders before they feel they have enough guidance on actually providing the PPP forgiveness. So we didn't have any new interim final rules. We've had so much breaking news on Wednesdays, I didn't even check this morning, so I will assume nothing happened this morning. We do perhaps anticipate more of the interim final rules, the IFRs as we're calling them, and we're looking for more guidance to kind of help get through this process. One thing we're finding is the easy forgiveness application is going to be the one that appears going to be used by most individuals. And we'll go over that in a few minutes, more PPP analysis of what you want to know. And our only thing on EIDL today is something that we mentioned and promoted last week. If you've had an EIDL loan that has been declined, and EIDL declines are obviously far more popular and common than PPP declines, but if you had an EIDL decline, the Fresno district of the SBA is having a EIDL reconsideration webinar tomorrow at 11 o'clock. You can go to the sba.gov website for Fresno and look at it and get some good information from individuals in the disaster unit themselves, and also from the district level, great information there as well. So that's it on EIDL. Just a quick review before we get into kind of the nuts and bolts of what we're getting into today is the guidelines. You know, these have been out for a few weeks and pretty much stuff that I think everybody's kind of knows, but kind of the foundation and the groundwork for what we're going to discuss. So mainly, you know, it went down payroll to 60%. You know, owner employee earnings were identified. They allowed payroll tax deferrals. Some of the FTEs were further identified, and we'll get into that right now. So one thing that comes out and that is available, if you look at the both the 3-page or the 5-page application forms, of which, since one of them is an optional page, we can call it a 2-page and a 4-page. It looks like a lot of the individuals are going to be able to use the easy form, the 2-page form. So the 3 criteria on that were you were self-employed and do not have any employees. You did not reduce your employees' hours, or you did not reduce their salaries by more than 25%. So if you did not reduce hours or did not reduce salaries or wages by 25%, you can use the easy. And also, as far as the FTE safe harbor, for if your business experienced reductions in business as a result of the health directives of 3 organizations related to the COVID-19 and did not reduce salaries or wages, the 25%. It just takes one of those boxes to check and you're in with the easy form. So on the form, though, of course, at the top is a checklist, and this is more or less, that is the summary of what I gather out of the checklist for the 3508 easy form. So a little bit longer version of that we probably won't get into because of time, but it is at the top of the easy 3508 SBA form. And the short version again, right there. So, you know, and just a little bit that we're going to get into this. I don't know if we'll be able to cover it and we're still anticipating one of the IFRs, one of the interim final rules, to be on the safe harbor and a little more guidance. I understand there's a lot of heartburn over this. I hear your heartburn. We're hoping that it kind of subsides and goes away and kind of goes away with a nice IFR, but if not, we'll look into what we know today, because that's what we do. Look at what we know today and kind of apply the knowledge that we have at this time for these safe harbors. So I think there's some really good verbiage in here, and really kind of, again, going back to what we've preached often on this program is the intent. And you can check the box for safe harbor by checking right there that at the end of the covered period or the alternative covered period, business activity was not the same as it was on February 15th due to compliance between March 1st and December 31st. Now, the interpretation and the heartburn I'm hearing from you comes from the fact that you might have experienced a lull and then an increase, or exactly the guidance on March 1st to December 31st is confusing and kind of giving a lot of people pain. So, you know, I've got to look at this as, if you had issues with your business, and it comes down and describes it a little bit here: sanitation, social distancing, worker or customer safety, you can check the box. Now, I think it's pretty straightforward if you own, for example, a bar, a restaurant, or another business that has now been shuttered for the second time during the crisis. I think if you had a business that had potentially a shutdown or a slowdown in sales and revenue, I think it's a little bit more risky, and then showed an increase. But some direction on if that's going to come, those sales are going to be on a monthly basis, your slowdown, a quarterly basis, or something like that, or a daily basis would, I think, be the guidance that really kind of helps a lot of people move forward from this. There's a safe harbor too, and we'll go through that in just a minute. It's on the form. This is the actual, what we call the long form. So there's safe harbor number 2, and it is just basically identifying the employees that came back and then adding the exceptions. And then, of course, the rule number 3 is if you've maintained the number of employees, then you're fine. So there's actually 3 safe harbors, and potentially even the old one that we had. I need to know if the old one actually applies or if it doesn't apply. But here was the old one, the old safe harbor exemption. And it identified the dates of February 15th ending April 26th. We'll get into this. Let's get into this actually by going into the spreadsheet, which really should help us identify this a little bit more. So let's stop that share. And now let's go into our Excel that I think that most of you are fairly familiar with. And few changes, quite a few changes today that we'll try to cover all of them, but I think some of them are going to get into next week. What we're going to do is just show real briefly what the profit and loss was in 19 and the wage earnings, to show you how we calculated. And again, I think it's important to always recall how you calculated your PPP loan. You can determine, or did determine, what your PPP loan was based on prior history of your payroll and of your earnings, your self-employed earnings, maybe your owner compensation. And in this example that we're going to be working with today, again, it was a $100,000 loan. So that jumps us into this right here, which is going to be essentially the long form, as I call it. And I started to fill it out a little bit. Well, I didn't start. I think I finished filling it out too. But let's go through this. This is not the easy, so this is going to be the longer one. And as you see, it just starts with your basic contact information that is probably on your loan, and gets into the loan amount, which is going to be important. Now, at the time of, my application, I had 15 employees. And at the time of this application, I'm going to put in, I think I have 14 and a half. Came close. Paid weekly, so I checked weekly. I didn't use the covered period. I used the alternative period, which was the 24-week period, starting with my date on 4/20 and ending on 10/4/20. And see, that's another thing on guidance that I think I would like to have a little bit more of. does my alternative covered period end when I quit paying or when I have paid out all my amount? I know that my covered period ends then, and I can technically apply if my lender is up and going. So if that's the case, then does my actual official alternative payroll covered period end, say, the end of July? We'll look at that in a minute. So then what I have is I have here a summary. If you recall, when we first looked at this form several weeks ago, we looked at it backwards. And what we found was the PPP schedule worksheet A, PPP schedule A worksheet was really an important factor because it kind of came into these numbers, and we'll kind of cruise down to that for just a second. What you're looking at is I have the form itself, but you have an option online where you can actually put it into Excel. And so just for clarity today and to add it to our PPP 17, we included it in today's 17th workshop, so, or seminar, webinar. So anyway, moving along, what we have is we have coming down, starting with the worksheet and going backwards, working backwards on in, I have my employees and the cash compensation and the average FTEs. So in adding these, I can probably take out the employees that did not come back, such as Tom Turkey and Sonny and Frida and a few others. But when I paid them over the period of time, and I'll go into this in a few minutes and show you my actual PPP where I pulled these numbers. So I basically used the forgiveness forecast and then transferred those numbers to my PPP actual. So in doing so, what I ended up with is I ended up with 43,010 full-time equivalents. Now, this is an important box right here because this is the FTE reduction exceptions. Because you remember, you can actually meet one of the characteristics if you don't just check the box and say my business was impacted by being able to add the employees that you tried to bring back, like we just did there, and actually increase that to 14.5. And then you list your owner compensation or those that actually earn over 100,000, which could be employees as well. So there's our safe harbor. Let me show you how I got to these numbers. Let me go over here to the actual, and here's how I got to these numbers. What I did was I had forecast, first of all, I had forecast, there's the actual. Here was my forecast, and I was forecast I was going to go out till the end of July. But then as it gets so important in managing this particular grant, what you find is you find that conditions change. And when my restaurant got shut down again, I wanted to wrap everything up on July 6th and try to meet this exception to make sure I met this forgiveness exception. So what I had done then was to move everybody's salary into here. And then I also moved up here and I actually took in some other expenditures such as the health insurance that I wasn't planning on taking, and also some of the other expenditures as far as rent and other things. So I was forecasting to take this over a longer period of time because I thought that'd be more beneficial for my cash flow. But then when the restaurant closed, or since I am a dine-in establishment at Kelly's Grill, I thought it was essential that I try to pay everybody right now, knowing that my revenue was going to drop again, my cash flow was going to go away, and it also helped my FTEs. So these are the questions that come up, and they're going to be unique and different in everybody's business, but these are the questions that you really need to ask yourself and try to manage in your PPP. So then I transfer this over into my actual. And so what I did here was I paid everybody in week 11 who was still working for me that week. And then by doing that, I also took some other expenses, such as the healthcare, and I took a portion of rent. And so up here, I ended up hitting my $100,000 loan. And I reached my 60% in salary and payroll benefits with $78,812. about 78%, and other costs 21%. Recall there was my dates that I used earlier, and so forth. So it was this information with my employees here that I transferred to the Schedule A worksheet. And there's the totals right there. I did delete a number of weeks here when I realized it would just make it easier to navigate. So you do have options in order to shorten or lengthen. I did notice in the form itself, when I got back over here to the form, when I started adding rows in here, it did create a lot of trouble since only about 4 or 5 are listed in here. So this information, my employees, there it is. I did add 4.5, it got me to 14.5. That does not equal my 15 that I needed for that exemption. So that is a little bit about filling out the form. Let me go back a little bit. You know, there is legislation that is pending that'll make all loans under 150 forgivable. And hopefully that happens. So getting back here to the worksheet, now you start to see where the numbers came from, the payroll numbers, the rent, the utilities, my 100,000 there. And so then I'm looking at the potential forgiveness amounts. And in multiplying 6 by 7, I get $100,000, my PPP loan, $100,000. And then by actually dividing my actual payroll expenses, the 78,800 by actually 0.6, I get 131,000. And my forgiveness amount is the lesser of all of those. Then all I do is go through these signing requests. And you know, this is a good exercise to go through before you get ready to go to the bank and do this. Most likely you will have an online portal where you enter this information. It'll probably be the same information. And then you'll also be uploading payroll reports and other information. So a lot of the reports that go in there, payroll information, etc., and so forth. So, you know, next week we'll dive into the FTEs. It's important. We'll get a clarification on the 3rd. But right now, with the virus, you know, reappearing and showing its ugly head again and shutting down a lot of the businesses that were affected originally, a lot of the questions are going to come for businesses that are still up and going and maybe even doing fairly well. If you've been doing fairly well, there's a good chance you've retained a lot of your employees already, which is another exemption. But there's still the possibility that, you know, with further guidance, it sounds like you'll be able to meet that particular need as well. So we looked at the PPP actual, figured it out in the forgiveness, the FTEs here, how I got to here was my original 15 that I needed, my listed employees that I had 11.5, and then I offered 3 of them employment back. I could have, if Tom Turkey would have came in and gave me a Tom Turkey completely disappeared. You know, I hope he wasn't, you know, the centerpiece of somebody's dinner, but he was not anywhere for me to find him to get written authorization for refusing to come back to work. And one other thing we had talked about, that there is a provision for actually terminating employees and counting them if they were discharged without cause. But in the last set of rules that came out, it was clarified that to do that, you need to have that person work in the covered period or the alternative covered period. So my case was Billy Mars here, who actually had a company violation that I realized when we were shut down. I did not offer a job to him because he violated company policy, and I terminated him with cause, but I could not claim his 0.5 because I did that before he had came back and worked in the covered or alternative period. And so that was an issue. Also on our FTEs, I needed 15. I had 11.5 work, 3 exceptions, got me close, but not quite there. And then there's the other calculation that we'll get into next week as well. And who knows, by next week, this all might be a moot point as more IFRs might come out clarifying the reduction in time and the more or less the periods, the time. Is it a day? Is it a week? Is it a month? Is it a quarter of when you've had a reduction from February 15th through your covered period to just check the box and move on with it? The intent, I believe, is to check the box for about every business that has had some type of impact, but I know many of you are still looking for more guidance on that issue. Well, it's 1 o'clock. I got to get to some questions here. So if you have questions, let's go back and let's stop sharing this. This will be available again this week. So a filled out version of the Excel. We did not get into the actual form itself. The actual form itself is right here. So that is pretty much the same thing, just download it into an Excel spreadsheet. You can print this out, you can write it in, because most likely you're not going to be submitting this particular form. You're going to likely use a portal. You're definitely going to use a portal for big banks and probably your mid-sized banks. And I would also anticipate some form of online entries, even for community banks, smaller credit unions, and even some of the nonprofits that made loans. So the 5-page loan pretty much follows the same guidelines that we used in the Excel spreadsheet, and go from there. Okay. On to your questions. To do that, I got to stop sharing, go to questions, and here we go. All right, Mr. Kern question. It has to do with, is Kern available for federal PPP? Jim answered that as saying yes. Restaurants closed for a second time. Even though they got a PPP, you can't apply in Kern. Remember that size loan, the limit of those loans are up to $75,000. Okay, this is a question that had to do with unpaid vacation, and the FTE dropped from 0.9 to 0.3 without her laying off. You know, I think my forgiveness strategy on that, if you have an employee that goes from 0.9 to 0.3 by requesting an unpaid vacation or leave, is just to document it. And I think that documentation based on your lender, because remember, you are approaching your lender to get forgiveness on this, not the SBA. So it's your lender's interpretation of the rules, the interim final rules, that will make that determination. Still nothing on the blanket exemption. Laying off employees after the PPP period, but before the end of the year. I think I covered that with my faux pas on my example, that yes, if they worked in the covered period and they are, you know, laid off employees aren't necessarily terminated with cause. So that opens up a little bit of a question there for me still. Let's see, here's another question. I have not replied for relief yet. For best for a sole proprietor with no employees. You know, I've mentioned this, I'm glad you asked this question, because I have talked to more people who are continuing to maybe put the money into their account. I believe your lender is going to want to see some form of payroll to yourself, even if it is into your same account. So by seeing that and by going that direction, it's largely anticipated that you're going to need some form. Now, the good thing is you have 24 weeks, and if you find this out and apply for forgiveness early, and your lender comes back and says, no, you got to show me where you actually have paid yourself for a specific period of time. So what you might want to do then is to not have your loan forgiven there. You have time open in your 24-week period is to actually then pay yourself subject to the limitations. The reason I mention this is because what I see is that if you make $100,000, you know, the limitation that we had was around $1,900 a week. And if you drop in advance $20,833, then that could be an issue. Let's see if we have some more questions. think we covered some of these FTE issues. Let's hit the chat, see what we got in the chat. How long does it, oops, I answered that one. Okay. We are a local restaurant that received a PPP from a local community bank in Bakersfield. Should we apply with the same bank for the Kern Recovers forgiveness? I definitely would, yes. If you have a banking relationship, I would go there because they are accepting both of them now. Again, when you get into this issue now you're going to be able to not double dip. You have to remember that if you have an open part of your PPP, it is not intended to both charge that employee to both programs. You'll run into both program issues. Both programs will have an issue with you if you do that. So if your PPP is running out over a period of time and you want a Kern Recovers forgivable loan, then it will have to supersede or actually go behind that period of time when you actually use that. The 3508 is in an easy form. Is it for EIDL or PPP? It is for the PPP. It is the forgiveness form. SBA 3508 easy form is an SBA form for PPP. Most banks and lenders are going to probably emulate that form pretty closely. That's why we spent a good deal of time in it today and went through that. And we will include that and also some of the current information in the handout that comes out this week. So you can use 9 weeks if that's it when your fund runs out. Yes, you can use a 9-week period. You would need to elect the 24-week alternative cover period or covered period. So depending on which your period is, it would be for the full 24 weeks. But as we discussed last week, what you can do is when the banks are accepting the forgiveness form, you can actually apply whenever your loan and your proceeds are gone. You don't have to wait to the end of the year with the 24 weeks. Can I use the EIDL loan to remodel and expand my family child care business? I wished I could say yes. Generally, EIDL loans are for working capital. They're for working capital uses. And generally, working capital is not for the purchase of fixed assets. Leasehold improvements are generally not working capital, which is what we have by improving and remodeling the family child care. So the intent of the EIDL loan is to cover your working capital expenses. Now, if you pay for your working capital, your employees, your supplies in the business, potentially your utilities and other things, what you use your cash flow from for the business, if you have cash flow coming in, is up to you. But you definitely want to differentiate that and not use your EIDL loan for remodeling, for capital purchases, and other things that are not working capital. Okay, I think that's it. So great to have you here on lucky number 17. And yes, Cheryl, I know I do owe you some seasonal, and you are the only person that has asked a seasonal question, and I will contact you regarding the seasonal application that you're going to need to do, because it is so unique and different from most everybody else. But I do realize that you do, and I'm going to write down your number. So that's it for this week. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week for number 18. Ask questions beforehand if you have them. Need any other assistance? If you have an Sbdc consultant throughout the Central California region, contact them. And stay safe and good luck, and we will talk to you soon. See you next week, everybody.